Hello and welcome to NewsClick. We have with us today senior journalist Sukumar Muralidharan, who has been a regular commentator here, and we shall discuss with him this whole phenomena of Hindutva Terror, so to say, now which is back in the public spotlight. After revelations by Hindutva activist Swami Aseemanand, affiliated to the Vanvasi Kalyan Ashram and affiliate of the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, the RSS, who recently confessed that the planning and execution of bomb blasts that killed many in Malegaon in 2006 and 2008, in the Makkah Masjid in Hyderabad in 2007, on the Samjhauta Express in 2007, and in Ajmer Sharif in 2007, were all the handiwork of a group of pracharaks from the RSS and other Hindutva activists. Sukumar, the Aseemanand confessions are now public and are being widely discussed. But the first real insight into this phenomena was actually provided by the investigations of late Hemant Karkare of the Maharashtra Anti-Terrorism Squad when he investigated the Malegaon blast. He found out that the alleged and prominent perpetrators of this blast were basically belonging to a group called Abhinav Bharat. But the links between the Abhinav Bharat and the mainstream Hindutva organizations are not quite clear. What do you know about this?
Yeah, well, Abhinav Bharat has a long history. It was an organization founded by V.D. Savarkar back in the 1940s. And it continues to have an existence under the leadership of the daughter of Gopal Godse, one of the Gandhi assassins, who was also married to a nephew of Mr. Savarkar's, Himani Savarkar. But it's believed that the Abhinav Bharat that has been instigating these terrorist attacks, has been instrumental in these terrorist attacks, is not formally linked with that. In fact, it is probably a new creation by the former army officer Colonel Shrikant Prasad Purohit, who assembled the basic team of activists that set off the string of blasts. So it probably is not linked with the original group of the same name, but obviously there is an element of inspiration that he has drawn from Savarkar's ideological kind of program, because Savarkar, as we all know, was a kind of prophet of this muscular, militarized Hindutva. He in fact coined that term Hindutva itself. Yeah, the political, the muscular kind of assertive form of Hinduism that he thought is essential to build up a strong sense of nationality.
But the confessions by Aseemanand actually point out. I mean, the key part of the confession is that there has been involvement of even a central committee member of the RSS, Indresh Kumar, whose name is doing the rounds. That don't you think is the key aspect of his confession that actually brings the role of the RSS per se in Hindutva terrorism itself?
Yes, well, the RSS is, goes by the self-proclaimed identity as a cultural organization without a formal structure of membership and so on. This is basically staffed by volunteers at various levels. But it has a central committee in which Mr. Indresh Kumar is a member. And presumably they do have meetings of the central committee. It's not very clear what the structure of those meetings are and whether these are minuted and so on. Obviously those need to be investigated. And the central committee meetings obviously would review and discuss the activities of each of the members over the prior whatever many months. So whether the RSS leadership itself was kept in the loop on these activities by Mr. Indresh Kumar or not is unclear. But the name of Indresh Kumar has been around for a while now, and it emerged from the interrogations earlier. Now it's emerged from Mr. Aseemanand's confession. But it's been in circulation earlier also, and in fact some newspapers had mentioned him as a key member of that ring. And in fact he's got a very wide range of activities. He's believed to have been responsible for organizing demonstrations in favor, in support of the Nepalese monarchy in the Nepali Terai through these last few years of the democratic transition in that country. And he is believed to have had a major role in the blockade of Kashmir Valley in 2008 during the disturbances over the Amarnath Yatra land endowment. So he is obviously a member in very high standing in the RSS hierarchy, and we really need to get more details of what his involvement is in these bomb blasts.
That makes this whole story quite curious in the sense that here is the RSS, which has through its political wing, so-called, so to say, the BJP has links with constitutional people who are in constitutional positions, like the leader of the opposition, for example, or even it has links with people in law enforcement, in the defense, and then now you have a linkage with criminal elements, clearly terrorists. Now, what kind of structure is this RSS? I mean, is this amorphous structure that it has by design?
Yes, obviously it is by design, and maybe they have learned something from their earlier experiences with these kind of activities that got them on the wrong side of the law, and probably they have found a way of structuring themselves internally and establishing chains of command internally that will avoid any possibility that culpability can be traced up to the top. But the pervasive influence of the RSS in various spheres of society is not a new phenomenon. It's been a fact of life ever since it was founded. At one time they chose to remain very much in a position of subordinate and almost in a state of subordinacy to the mainstream political parties. Prior to independence, they were most unwilling to take on the Congress party directly because they believed that there were elements within the Congress who could argue that case effectively. But following independence, they emerged in their own right as a political party. And since then, there have been obviously serious successes achieved in placing their key members in certain important positions in the constitutional governance hierarchy.
There is a clever division of labor, as in the Bajrang Dal, which is also part of the Sangh Parivar, does the dirty work. The VHP takes care of the religious business, so to say. The BJP it takes care of the political duties. And then you have these various groups which are interlinked each other. When coming back to Aseemanand himself, apparently most of his work was done in the Dangs district in Gujarat, which was the scene of organized attacks on Christians in the late 90s. Of course, riots and organized attacks on minorities have been taking place in Gujarat since the late 1960s itself. But I suppose the Dangs case was replicated in other states as well, right? In Orissa, in Chhattisgarh. So, what do you make of this this fellow Aseemanand himself?
Well, it is obviously a key grievance of the Hindutva fraternity that Christian missionaries are allowed reasonable latitude to work in tribal areas and to claim harvest the souls, as they say, as their program envisages. And they see this a demographic threat that the Hindus are being marginalized, and so because everything is cast in religious terms, and your political identity is supposed to emerge out of your religious affiliation in that Sangh worldview. So this is seen as a threat to the Hindu religion and to the sense of nationality that that animates India today. So the other Swami Amritananda, who was earlier arrested after Hemant Karkare's investigations, was a key activist in Jammu and Kashmir, and that is again a zone of serious concern for the RSS, because they see that it's got infirm loyalties to the sense of Indian nationality, and there are refugees there who offer a fertile ground for them to cultivate and to spread their roots. So these are, in a sense, they fit in with the, basic template, of Hindutva Parivar activities. And similarly with the Swami Lakshmananda Saraswati in Orissa, who was killed by Maoists, and that killing sparked off a wave of attacks on the tribals, Christian tribals, and Dalit Christians in the region. So, in a sense, Aseemanand is, a localized worker of the BJP who is confined to Dang's district. But then, obviously, with this new climate, worldwide climate that was created in the last decade of combating jihadi terrorism, he moved out and became an operator on a broader scale. And many of the attacks that he was instrumental in planning, or he had a role in planning, were in the nature of perhaps revenge attacks. But one should also not rule out the possibility that he was trying to feed this kind of a mood of popular revulsion against jihadi terrorism, and capitalizing on the public mood, which saw any act of terrorism as necessarily connected to jihadi groups, irrespective of who the victim is. So you had a situation in which the victims in Makkah Masjid, Malegaon, Ajmer Sharif, Samjhauta Express were themselves blamed for the attacks.
Right.
So it was very curious, because, and that wouldn't have been possible without that overarching mood.
In a sense, both these forms of terror, so to say, Hindutva terror of this variety, and also jihadi terror, which owes its inspiration to Wahhabi form of Islamism, they kind of feed off each other, right? Here are groups such as the Lashkar and others who have showed images of what happened in the Gujarat riots to recruit people into their fold. And here are Hindutva terror groups which are suggesting that their acts are basically acts of revenge for what happened in Akshardham temple in Gujarat some time back, and so on and so forth. But the larger question remains, how does the Indian state take on this challenge from both these groups? And do you think the response has been adequate at all so far?
Well, obviously there's a huge governance deficit here, and it's feeding this kind of polarization, and various kinds of actors like the Sangh Parivar and the jihadi terrorists can feed off each other in that sense. If there is a viable and a credible institutional framework of governance, then there is no reason why this should happen. Now, take instance of the sense of grievance that still remains unassuaged of the victims of the Gujarat riots. It's now close to 10 years since that, 9 years since that happened, and there is yet no prospect of justice or of accountability for the perpetrators of those riots. Take, for instance, the demolition of the Babri Masjid in 1992. The prosecution of the culprits there is now stuck in a quagmire. It's going nowhere. And at the same time, you had the judiciary delivering a verdict on the title deed for that piece of land, which was seen to be a theological judgment more than one based on judicial reasoning. You had the Graham Staines murder, the judgment in that case recently from the Supreme Court. And shockingly, the Supreme Court talks about the murderer as having had no other intent than just teaching a lesson to the missionary and his two sons by setting them afire. Now, this is astounding logic. Fortunately, that was expunged from the judicial record later. But just the fact that the judgment was delivered in that tone to begin with shows that there are certain institutional biases in our governance, and this is apparent in the alacrity with which young Muslims from the neighborhood were picked up after the Malegaon blasts, in the police firing that followed when demonstrations were breaking out in Hyderabad after the Mecca Masjid blast. More people were killed in the police firing than in the blasts in that incident. So, And then people were picked up, and reportedly recently the Andhra Pradesh police filed a report saying that they had solved the case, and that 11 local Muslim youth and some 8 Bangladeshis were responsible for it. Now all that has been proven to be completely hollow. So if you have a system of governance that fails to establish its credibility with people of diverse faiths, then obviously you'll have extreme elements from all sides capitalizing on it and feeding off each other.
So in other words, you're saying that the Indian state should, the organs of the Indian state should give off all those non-objective biases that have set into the ways they have investigated these crimes and also handled the process of justice post these incidents, right? That's what you're trying to say.
Yeah, well, the corrective has to be applied. Now, how easy that's going to be is another matter. It's not an easy matter at all, because it is not just when you talk about institutional biases, it's also there are certain individual biases on the part of the people who man those institutions. But more than that, there are aspects of this which even well-meaning individuals cannot fully overcome. Now, take the case of Hemant Karkare. He's the man who we all have to thank for having opened up this line of inquiry of Hindutva terrorism. Now, he too had to make really dogged investigations to get to to open up these threads of investigation, and the kind of vilification and public anger that he faced is still fresh in memory. So it's not easy to stand up to that kind of pressure, and it's not clear that Mr. Karkare had the full backing of his force either, because once he was removed from the scene, his successors didn't show any of the same kind of sense of purpose, which is a reason why the trail went a little cold until the Rajasthan police investigations uncovered some other aspects of this Hindutva terror plot.
Relatedly, just as you say that, there have been, these biases have set into the way investigative agencies have gone about investigating these blasts. In one sense, even the sections of progressive media, unfortunately, have preemptively associated this blast with radical Islamist groups without doing their due diligence. Don't you think that's a failing of the media, also sections of the media as well, vis-a-vis these blasts?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the media opted for the easiest sounding story and loudly kind of proclaimed it as the truth. And the story was in many senses counterlogical, because it makes no sense to argue that when the victims of these blasts are Muslims, that the perpetrators also are Muslim fundamentalists. And now they invented another kind of narrative there, which said that the jihadi Wahhabi strain of Islam is extremely antithetical to the syncretist practices of South Asian Islam, and that they want to strike at the symbols of this kind of syncretist practice. And Makkah Masjid was one such symbol of that. Ajmer Sharif was another. Ajmer Dargah was another such symbol of that. Now, it is, it strains credulity to believe that because there are ties of blood here. It's not as if, and they know each other, they're part of the same community. People in Malegaon who were arrested for the crime were local people. They, in all probability, would have known the victims of their supposed act of terrorism. So these questions are never asked. And any kind of self-respecting media which believes that it owes the public the duty of fair reporting would have asked those questions, and they didn't. They just went by whatever story was spun by the official investigators. So we have to really ask how far the real perpetrators of this of these blasts had the prior assurance that the investigations would go along these lines. Because if they had known that there is a person like Mr. Hemant Karkare there, who will go by the evidence and not go by popular mythology and prejudice, then they would have been a little bit more careful. I think they had a prior assurance from somewhere that the investigations would conform to that template of jihadi terrorism and would, in that sense, play to the sense of popular prejudice against the minority community. So, really, the pointers towards the kind of the rot in our institutions of governance and the criminal justice system are really very, very grim.
On this note, I think we shall end this interview. Thank you, Sukumar. Thank you for your